Vischa, Kripasinduevicha, Patitanam Pavanabhyo, Vaishnavabhyo Namamaha. Om again Tirumdasya, Ganjana Salakaya, Chakshurmritamina, Tashme Shri Guru Maha. Trinadapi Sunichina, Tarodapi Sahishuna, Amanina Manadena, Kitni Sadahari, Aten Kampam Susamik Shamano, Pujavet Makitam Vipatam, Hikvat Kapubi Vididam Namaste, Jiva no Makti Sadabak, Vachovigam, Manashakrodovigam.
Yeah, he just called on the phone.
Jiva Vegam, Udorapastavegam, Etam Vegam, Yo Vishahetadira, Savapiman, Pritivim Sasishat, Anya Blasta Sunyam, Gyan Kamdyana Vitam, Anukalenya Krishna Shilanam, Bhakti Uttama, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadata Shivasadi, Gaura Bhaktivinoda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My Dandavat Pranams to my beautiful Srila Gurudev, Parampara, to all the assembled devotees, and also all those devotees who are going to be watching this on the recording as well. This is the second installment of this week's Mercy Grace Lila program, just to remind everybody what we're doing and why we're doing it. At the end of Kartik 2020, we didn't want to be bereft of that sense of being connected to Braj, and we wanted to prepare ourselves nicely in advance for Kartik 2021, Gurudev's 100th appearance, Kartik year in Braj. Kartik, the two parikrams are so near and dear to Gurudev. They were part of his lifelong mission to institute them and make them a perennial event, a growing event, but most of all, something that we can all connect to and feel is our real home. So we brought together this program whereby once a week we beg for the mercy of the appearing and disappearing acharyas and Vaishnavas, begging them for the mercy that we may be connected to Braj. And then also we go through the Leelas throughout the year. We've been immersed in Navreep Leelas up until the Navreep Parikram. Then we had an ecstatic Parikram for Navreep, and now we're building up for the Kartik Leelas. So today is at a different time because we're beaming live in from Godrum. I always love that saying, beaming live from Godrum. We've got our beloved Sripada Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Maharaja, who always is on fire, sets us on fire with his Lila, and he's going to be speaking on Brahmara-gita and the chapter 47 of the 10th canto. So Maharaj, a very, very warm welcome as ever. Please, the Zoom floor is all yours. Dandavat Pranams.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Unmuted also.
Perfect.
Okay. So always grateful to be with you, Yashoda. I was thinking of the title of your Zoom, Bhakti Zoom, this Mercy, Grace, and Lila. How appropriate. We're praying for the mercy to get the grace to enter the Lila. So very sweet progression you've chalked out there. Mercy, Grace, Lila. Very beautiful. So today we're going to pray for the mercy, and I hope we get the grace, and we're going to hopefully enter into the most confidential Lila. So I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat Pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami. And I'm offering the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam pravajantam anapetyam apetya krityam dvaipaino viraha katara ajugava putreti tam mayatayo taravo vinidustam sarvabhutam munim hriday anato shmi. So this topic today is probably the most confidential, I feel, in the Bhagavatam, this Brahmara-gita. So initially we have to do some little bit platform building to get the adhikar to enter there. So right at the very beginning of this Srimad Bhagavatam, we see the Bhagavatam is 12 cantos. And the first 9 cantos is the stairway to the Prayojan Tattva of the 10th canto. Within the 10th canto, there are 2 divisions principally. There is Braj initially. First of all, there's 5 chapters about Mathura, and then there's Vrindavan itself with Krishna's Balya Lila. And then we shift to Mathura, a little bit in Mathura, the killing of Kamsa, etc. And then we go to Dwarka for the last 45 chapters, 40 chapters of the 10th canto, 90 chapters altogether in the 10th canto. So it's interesting to appreciate that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his description of the first verse, Janmadi Asya Yata Nivyad Etaratash Karteshu Abhignatsuram, this first verse, Satyam Paramadimahi, is mentioned at the end of the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives us 5 considerations or explanations of what is the Satyam, truth, Parama, highest truth, to be meditated upon. Satyam Paramadimahi, within this Srimad Bhagavatam. And his first proposition is it's the Brahman. Many want to go that route. The second proposition is it's Narayan in Vaikuntha. Many also want to go that way. And the third proposition is Radha and Krishna. And the fourth is Madhurya and meeting and separation. These are the topics that Srimad Bhagavatam can afford us, can give us. And then the fifth explanation he gives is that it's Bhakti Devi herself that is the jewel of this Bhagavatam, Bhakti, devotion herself. So we have impediments for the conditioned soul, principally impersonalism and Mayavadism. This is what we're obstructed by. And we have this beautiful verse that by Rupa Goswami, Bhukti Mukti Spriha Yavat, Pishchachi Hridi Vartate. So this very beautiful verse is saying these 2, as long as these 2 witches of Bhukti, material enjoyment, which we can say is like Mayavadism, if we're trying to usurp the Lord's property for our own pleasure, this is Mayavadism, and Mukti, which is principally impersonalism. So these 2 witches are dancing in the heart. Raghunath Das, he describes in Manashiksha this same principle also. So unless these 2 principles can be purified by the conception of the personality. So we see throughout the first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam, this is really addressing the personal form of the Lord. If we scroll through the first canto, we see, for example, in chapter 12 and 13, it's describing Krishna leaving Hastinapur and arriving in Dwarka. And it's so incredibly personal, and it's so reassuring and strong in purifying our impersonal tendencies. all the way through, so that by the time we come to the 10th canto, we have had some purification. We've been able to build a platform. This platform for us in the Western world was built and erected by our beloved Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He gave us Krishna fully. He gave us the conception of Krishna being the supreme personality of Godhead. Without this conception, we can't generate the respect that is needed as the foundation to enter the topics of Madhurya. The mood of Madhurya is very confidential. And unless a healthy respect is there and a clear understanding of the nature and personality of the Lord, then we won't be able to, with our hearts, enter these topics really at all. So it's saying that Krishna swadharmo pajite dharmajanati visaha kalona satrisham isha purana kodinodita. That this Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun and has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna for his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Men who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of this age shall get light from this Bhagavad Purana. So this is spoken in the first canto, third chapter. So this is making the groundwork. It's explaining where we're going, what is our goal. We have to know clearly what is the sadhya. We have the sadhan, the practice, but unless the sadhya is crystal clear, how can we go in third, fourth, fifth, sixth gear to attain or to acknowledge or appreciate sadhya? Essentially, we're not attaining anything. We're just waiting for the mercy to be benefited to us, to come to us. Our path is avaroha panta. We are, it's the descending path. We're waiting for that mercy to descend. So within the 10th chapter, there are the 5 life heirs. The 5 life heirs are so esoteric. They're so heart-touching. They're so exceptional. Krishna comes to this world with his gopis from Gokul. He comes to this world with them. They come to this earthly realm, and they are represented as simple cowherd village girls with all the simplicity, beauty, straightforwardness, and sweetness of young 14, 15-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls. And their hearts are completely touched entirely by the Lord. Their bhakti is the highest exhibition of bhakti known to man. There is no other bhakti that is demonstrated that can be higher than the gopis. It's saying very beautifully, we had Rai Ramananda Samvad a few days ago we were discussing, and in that Samvad, in text 202, it's saying that actually only the gopis have the right to appreciate these transcendental pastimes, and only from them can these pastimes be expanded. So the necessity to appreciate the gopis themselves, to accept the gopis as our highest aspiration, that this is our focus. If we don't accept this proposition, Srila Gurudev says very beautifully in his essay at the beginning of Venu-gita. In Venu-gita, there's an introduction, which is explaining how it's not by our efforts in purification that is going to give us the qualification to enter into these topics, but it's the mercy of Guru. And it's the form of the mercy, the way it manifests, is in the form of enthusiasm or greed. If a greed can be ignited in the heart of the practitioner, of the sadhak, to enter these pastimes, that is the ingredient, that is the seed, that is what we are praying for, that is what we are hoping for. So Srila Gurudev is saying that if we question this journey into the 10th canto, into the very confidential topics of the gopis, between the gopis and Krishna, then we are of an atheistic mentality. He says it 3 times, this word. He's talking about this beautiful verse, Vikriti-tam brajavadubi itam cha Vishnu, which is the last verse of the Rasa Panchadya. This verse is explaining to Parikshit and all those assembled sages that unless we become inspired by hearing about these exceptional pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan with the gopis, then the ultimate goal can never be attained. Then we are going to settle for something much less. So our Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, he has highlighted this so prominently in the 20-odd years that he was preaching in the Western world. This needs to have that sort of time frame to really penetrate our steel-like hearts, which are covered by Mayavad and impersonal tendencies. We have the faith in the Lord, but unless we have faith in his Lila and his pastimes, it's almost as if we simply want liberation, or we want to make a nice situation for us here in this world. We want to live in a nice community with a nice temple, with a nice school for the kids, with all our flowers growing and our vegetables and everything like that. And this is like a healthy dream, but at the same time, this is not at all the goal of our being here, of our existence, of us being fortunate to have this human birth. So Srila Gurudev says in this introduction to Venu-gita, he said the word dira, this is referring to the words into the verse Vikriditam Brajavadubi Itam cha Vishnu. The word dira means a pandit, or one who is learned in the Shastra, one who disbelieves the statement of this verse and thinks, as long as the disease of lust remains in the heart, prem cannot be attained. Many people are under this misconception that because I'm so fallen, so lusty, I cannot enter into the topics of the gopis in Braj. First of all, I have to purify my material, fallen, contaminated existence. And when I purified that, then I will feel eligible to enter into the 10th canto. But this is not the conclusion of Shukadev Goswami at all. Neither is it the conclusion of our acharyas, particularly Srila Gurudev. So he's saying, as long as the disease of lust remains in the heart, prem cannot be attained. If one thinks like this, he is said to possess an atheistic temperament. One who is free from such a foolish atheistic demeanor is known as a pandit or sober person, dira. Consequently, only those who have firm faith in the Shastra are known as dira. Those who have no faith in the statements of the Shastra are atheists and offenders to the holy name. Such persons can never attain prem. So I'm just trying to make a solid platform here for the eligibility for us to enter into this 47th chapter, which is the topic that I've chosen to speak and share with today about Brahmara-gita. And we need to be very assured that, yes, this is the path. In this verse, Vikriditam Brajavadubi Etam cha Vishnu, Shradanvito Nushrunyad Artha Varenyamya, Bhaktim Param Bhagavati Pratilavya Karmam, Ridroga Masapa Pinoti Acharena Dira. That first of all, we hear these topics, and then we perform kirtan, we speak about these topics, and then smaranam, then remembrance of these topics will come. This is the process, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. This is the process that the is described. This is Navada Bhakti. This is what Prahlad described just last week. We were describing this. So we must have this confidence that by hearing these esoteric, incredible topics, even if I don't understand the topics, actually don't try to understand the topics at all with our meager material intelligence. Try to simply appreciate the topics. Try to simply appreciate the moods of these greatest of bhaktas, this Ramya Kachit Upasana Braja Bardu Vargena Vakalpite. These are the greatest worshippers, Upasana, of Krishna in existence. Of course, the greatest is Sri Radhika, but all her Sakhis also are included in that group of the greatest bhaktas in existence. So now we can come perhaps to our topic. We understand the nature of this Bhagavatam, as I've described. It's building slowly through the first 9 cantos, and then we enter into Mathura, first of all, in the 10th canto, in Kamsa's realm, and Vasudeva and Devaki, and then we quickly come into the forests of Gokul, which is where Krishna performs his childhood pastimes, and then later on, Vrindavan. They shift to Vrindavan and to Nandagaon. So that's the sequence of the chapters. And then we see Krishna going through his Balya Lila, then his Poganda Lila, and then he's coming into his Kaishor Lila. And it's interesting how Shukadev crafts the Bhagavatam, how with the 20th chapter, it's about the rainy season. So that's sort of like a break, so to speak, between Krishna's childhood pastimes with the cowherd boys, the Sakhas principally, and then we're coming into a more confidential part of the 10th canto where the gopis are going to be more prominent. And the 21st chapter, we come to Venugita. This is the first Gita. All the 5 Gitas are about the separation moods of the gopis. We should understand, even though these separation moods are described in our language as being torturous and hard to bear, that actually within that separation, the gopis are experiencing the highest states of ecstasy. This is called Mohan and Madan, or Modan and Madan. These are the 2 states of separation, which have the same intensity of bliss as does Madan. Madan is that union, meeting, bliss, taste. And Mohan is the separation. So we have Madan, Mohan. So this is the dynamic throughout the Bhagavatam. To appreciate Prem on any level, we have to try to consider this aspect, this dynamic of meeting and separation. And this is what is definitely going to come forth in this 47th chapter. I'm feeling that it's necessary for me to build this premise or this platform or this preface to where we're going today, because it is an extraordinarily astonishing, emotionally charged chapter. So we have the Venugita, and then we have Pranaya Gita, where Krishna's called all the gopis and then he's sent them home, and then they've wanted to practically enter Mother Earth because they don't feel good enough for Krishna's association. That's how they've been made to feel by Krishna. So this will produce something very special from their hearts towards Krishna, which he wants to see. And then we come to the Gopi Gita. Of course, the beautiful songs of separation when Krishna has danced with all the gopis, and then he's left for many reasons. And then the gopis are feeling such extreme separation. Collectively, they all chant together. And then we have Yugal Gita, which again is a mood of separation. All the Gitas, they're all separation moods. But then it seems that Shukadev Goswami takes us out of Vrindavan when Krishna mounts the chariot of Akrura and goes to Mathura. And actually, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur calls this the Viraha-gita. So he makes it 6 geets, not 5 geets. And in this Viraha-gita is when the gopis are lamenting, because they can intuit that, yes, Krishna is going away for a long time. How can we bear? How can we begin to understand this separation of the gopis, that just by the blinking of their eyes, they curse Lord Brahma. They say he's not a very good creator because he gave us eyes that blink. I mean, this is their height of attraction and attachment to Krishna. They can't even stand that momentary blinking of the eye. How can we comprehend this? We can't understand it, of course, as I said before. We can appreciate it. We can begin the process of appreciating the intensity of their attraction to Krishna, because it's only by attraction to the Supreme Lord that we are going to be purified of these tendencies of Mayavadism and impersonalism. Unless we have that attraction for Krishna, this is why the verse is there, Vikriditam Brajavatu Bicham cha Vishnu. It's saying that first we have to hear about the topics. First we have to get a taste towards the beauty and speciality of Krishna. If we don't get that taste, we'll be lingering in Gyan Kand or Karma Kand areas. We won't go into the Lila. So it's attachment for that place. And of course, Srila Gurudev arranged for us to come to Vrindavan every year. He arranged for us to come to Goradam every year to generate and inspire that taste in our hearts in a very profound way. So yes, the Viraha-gita. And then Shukadev takes us out of Vrindavan to Mathura, the killing of Kamsa, etc. And Krishna visiting Kubja, etc., all these different pastimes there. And then it seems that Shukadev can't actually leave Vrindavan, that he goes back to describe the messenger, Uddhav. Uddhav is Krishna's most confidential minister, his mantri in Dwarka. Uddhav, of course, is a disciple of Brihaspati. He's a Jnani Bhakta. And this is what makes the Brahmara-gita so exceptional and extraordinary, because here is a Jnani Bhakta, and he's going to enter Vrindavan on the order of Krishna to deliver the messages to the highest bhaktas in existence, the gopis. So this is a dichotomy, you can say. This is like two completely different moods meeting together. And this is completely unique, that there's no other person that enters Vrindavan and witnesses the extraordinary madhurya of the gopis. Akrura comes, but for a very, very short time, perhaps 48 hours maximum, less than that even, 2 days. And but Uddhav, he comes, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes, for several months. He remains amongst the gopis. So Uddhav being a Jnani Bhakta, this means that he sees Krishna in his Staibhav, in Uddhav's Staibhav form. He's a Prematur Bhakta. He's the most greedy to be with Krishna out of the 5 different types of bhaktas, from Prahlad through Ambarish, through Hanuman, through the 5 Pandavas. Then there's Uddhav at the top of their expression of bhakti. But it's nevertheless still in the mood of Aishwarya. Still, Aishwarya is prominent. So when he comes in the 46th chapter, Krishna sends him with messages to console his parents, to console, of course, principally the gopis. This is why Uddhav comes into Vrindavan. So we see in the 46th chapter how he's trying to console Nanda Baba. And he can't even speak to Mother Yashoda. She's just sitting off to the side, completely silent. She has no more tears even of separation mood from Krishna. She's totally immersed internally. But Nanda Baba is making an attempt to be with Uddhav and converse with him, because they see that he's Krishna's representative. He even looks like Krishna. Uddhav is Krishna's cousin brother. His father, Devabhag, is the brother of Vasudeva. So they are cousin brothers. Uddhav is younger than Krishna. The name Uddhav means festival of joy. So Uddhav is an exceptional personality that we meet a number of times in the Bhagavatam. In the third canto, he's discussing with Vidura. This is after he's been to Vrindavan. And he's explaining in the second chapter such beautiful aspects of Krishna in Vrindavan to Vidura. So this is the principal seva that Uddhav is going to perform. He's going to come and witness the extraordinary height of the gopis' prema, and then he's going to take that experience back to speak with the Mathura-vasis first and then the Dwarka-vasis a bit later. So this is the context, so to speak. So then Uddhav, he spends time with Nanda Baba, and there's very beautiful descriptions there where Nanda Baba, he's only relishing hearing about Krishna as his son. And then Uddhav says to him, of course, you know that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He's everybody's father. I mean, how's that going to go down with Nanda Baba? He just, you know, kind of blanks out when that comes, when Uddhav says like that. So at the same time, he begins to sort of pacify Uddhav. And he says at one point, he says, perhaps my two sons, Balaram and Krishna, were greatly empowered demigods. He says this one verse amongst 10 verses. And Uddhav chooses to pick up on that particular verse and expand on that, saying, yes, yes, they are great. They are so great. So this is the vision of a Jnani Bhakta. So now he comes in to the forest at Uddhav Kyeri. Srila Gurudev once described in Paderborn in Germany, how Uddhav goes in the morning to perform his ablutions. He's at the Krishna Kund and he's taking his bath there. Then he looks up across and he can see from there the forest of Kadambas, this huge ancient forest of Kadamba trees. And within that forest, he sees an illumination. And that illumination is the camp of the gopis. The gopis are still there after Krishna has left. Krishna has left Vrindavan at this time for more than a year practically, because during this time, Krishna has been to Ujjain. He's learned the 64 arts from Sandipani Muni and he's returned. And then he's felt such extreme separation from the gopis at that time that he sends Uddhav to Vrindavan with his messages. So Uddhav comes into the assembly of the gopis. And when the gopis first see this chariot that Uddhav has come on, because it's the same chariot that Akrura came. It's the same chariot that took their beloved Krishna out of Vrindavan. And they say to themselves, this is in the last verse of the 46th chapter, they say to themselves, oh, this must be Kamsa's messenger. He can't be satisfied with just having Krishna there. He actually wants to take our flesh as oblations. So this is the last verse. I'll just read it to you exactly. It's saying that, is he, Akrura, going to use our flesh to offer funeral oblations for his master, who was so satisfied with his service, with Akrura's service? As the women were speaking in this way, Uddhav appeared, having finished his early morning duties. So sense the heart of the gopis in this sentence. That's how they're feeling. Their feelings are that has Uddhav come to take their flesh? They're angry. There's so many emotions swirling within their hearts. You know, they are so much in this mood of anguished separation. But internally, we always appreciate that they are tasting that union in separation, this mohan. But externally, it's presented in a sense of acute pain. So when when Uddhav comes into the presence of the gopis, then the gopis, they seat him very comfortably, and then they begin to ask him different questions. They say that friendship doesn't really exist in this world other than within the family. And then they give examples of apparent material friendship. This is part of their moods that they are expressing to Uddhav in their extreme separation mood. And they're saying that fickle men abandon a beautiful woman after drinking their loving honey, and prostitutes abandon a penniless man, and subjects an incompetent king, students a teacher whose education has finished, priests abandon a donor who has rewarded them, birds abandon a tree with no fruits, guests a house that they have eaten at, and animals in a forest that is burnt down, and a lover of a woman, even though she's still attached, the lover will abandon her. So this is what is coming out of the gopis' hearts initially. And then the gopis, they decide to give their full attention to Uddhav at this time. And Uddhav notices that just close by, there's one particular gopi, and her illumination and brilliance is far more than the other gopis. And of course, this is Sri Radhika. So then Uddhav, he comes closer, and Radhika, she, as if addressing Uddhav or addressing Krishna. So the commentators have said that it's either, or we can take as both, that Radhika is directly speaking to Uddhav, or she's directly speaking to Krishna through Uddhav. So this first verse that is being described, this is verse 12 of chapter 47. So now we come into our subject matter, which is to describe this mad or Divyan Mad talks of Sri Radhika in her most bewildered condition. So this is such an extraordinary revelation from the heart of Sri Radhika. This sort of revelation has not come previously in the Bhagavatam. This is the first time we're hearing something so confidential, so internal, so special within the heart of Radhika, that Shukadev Goswami is sharing with Parikshit and all the other 88,000 sages that are there at Sukratal, where he's speaking this Bhagavatam. So he's not speaking it in just a very confidential room or anything of that nature. He's speaking it in a very paka assembly of sages and rishis. So the way he's presenting it is extraordinary for them. So this verse 12 is a famous verse that Srila Gurudev would quote many times. It's Madhupa Kaitava Bandhu. Radharani is seeing a bumblebee, and the bumblebee is buzzing around her, and she's talking to the bumblebee, perhaps as if it's Uddhav, or as if it's a messenger from Krishna other than Uddhav, because Uddhav is going to be witnessing this extraordinary love talk. It's called Chitra Jalpa. We're going to describe a little bit of these 10 different jalpas, these 10 different insane talks, it's described, or mad talks, but they're not really mad. It's like a great saintly person, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At one point, he considers that he was suffering from madness until Srivas Pandit told him, no, this is just the ecstasies are rising in your heart. So they can manifest in ways that materially appear to be mad. So they're not really mad at all. So Radhika is telling the bumblebee not to touch her feet. And she's seeing that the bumblebee has natural yellowish, pinkish whiskers. So she's accusing the bumblebee of coming from, as being Krishna, and still covered by the kumkum from the Mathura-vasi's breasts, from the ladies' breasts in Mathura. So this whole mood of jealousy towards Krishna is rising in Radhika's heart. And she says that she calls Krishna, first of all, a complete cheater, a liar. Krishna has said previously, this beautiful verse, that for my sake, Krishna is saying to the gopis, you've come and given up everything, and yet I have given you up. This is in the 32nd chapter. This is Evam Madartho Jiheta Loka Veda. This is the beautiful verse where Krishna is, in a sense, apologizing to the gopis, and yet he leaves them. He leaves them for so long. After he's taken their hearts, captured their hearts completely, danced with them during the Ras Lila, given them the nectar of his embraces and kisses, etc., and then he's left them for so long. How are they able to tolerate this? This Krishna wanted to arrange for the whole world to witness the tolerant nature of the gopis, that they could withstand this intense separation for 100 years. It's 100 years that Krishna leaves Vrindavan. He goes to Dwarka for 100 years to perform all his pastimes, the Mahabharata war, etc., killing, purifying all the demons, etc. This takes 100 years. It's 350,000 nights that the gopis experience separation from Krishna. So the intensity of this is extraordinary for us as sadhaks to appreciate the loving nature between Krishna's most dear devotees, the gopis. So we are in the line of the gopis. We are wanting to follow in the anugatya of the gopis, to serve them. This is our sadhya, to serve them, as I just read in the Rai Ramananda Samvad, that without this service to the gopis, we cannot enter Vrindavan proper. We cannot enter at all into the moods of divine love between Radha, to the service of Radha and Krishna. We say, Mahaprabhu, he has given us this anapita chirim chirat kurunai bharatino kalo samarvaitam unnata ujvala rasam swa bhakti shriyam, that the sadhak is gifted the opportunity to serve this unnata ujvala ras between Radha and Krishna. So how can we appreciate the love between Radha and Krishna except by reading these types of chapters in the Srimad Bhagavatam? Especially this chapter in the Bhagavatam will give us a sense of what it is to serve Radha and Krishna, or what is the nature of the hearts of those who please Krishna the most. So then Radhika, she's accusing Krishna. She's saying, Krishna, you said to us, na pariyeham niravadya samyujam. You said that you cannot repay us even in the lifetime of Lord Brahma, and yet you've left us. And when Krishna left on the chariot, he also said that he would return very quickly, but he's a liar, he's a cheat. And she condemns him with great indignation. She condemns him with the indignation of a rival lover. She has great jealousy and pride and disrespect, and these harsh words are coming from the lotus-like mouth of Sri Radhika. And Uddhav, he's seeing this extraordinary behavior. Uddhav understands that Krishna is the most gentle, Krishna is the most powerful, he's the most courageous, he's the most beautiful, he's the most honest, he's God. He's the complete personality of Godhead. Krishna has 4 principal characteristics. He's Dhirodata, Dhir Lalit, Dhir Shantaha, and Dhir Datta. These four qualities of Krishna. So Uddhav, he's seeing him like in Dhir Shanta or Dhirodata, this great personality. You can't get a person greater than the Lord. And here is apparently Krishna's greatest worshipper practically blaspheming the Lord. How can Uddhav reconcile that? This is the dynamic of this conversation. This is most wonderful to appreciate this. So this first type of jalpa, it's called prajalpa. This is very interesting because there's 10 different types of jalpa going to be described. And there's going to be 5. There's prajalpa, parijalpa, ujalpa, vijalpa, and sanjalpa. And they culminate, they escalate in intensity towards sanjalpa. In sanjalpa is when Radhika is condemning Krishna in the most strong words in sanjalpa. Complete sarcastic criticism, it's described. Krishna's ingratitude. He's a treacherous person. He's merciless. He lacks love. This is the heart of a lover who feels rejected by her lover. So this is very wonderful for the sadhak to appreciate these moods of Sri Radhika. It takes us into another world of the moods and specialities of the gopis. So this sanjalpa is the 5th jalpa. And then, remarkably, if you go through carefully all of these 10 jalpas, the next is avajalpa, ajalpa, abhijalpa, abjalpa, pratijalpa, and sujalpa. These are the next 5. And they gradually come out of this harshness, because in the final jalpa, the final expression of sujalpa, it's described that out of honest sincerity, a lover inquires about Sri Hari with gravity, humility, unsteadiness, and unique eagerness. This is how Rupa Goswami has described this sujalpa in his Ujjvala Nilamani. So this is the heart of this chapter 47, in fact. I've made it very, very brief. We only have we're restricted with time, but if we had more time to actually really unpack these feelings and sentiments, because they're all sanchari bhavs, and they're all described as acting on the lake of the sthai bhav. The sthai bhav is madhurya, and these sanchari bhavs of jealousy, of pride, of fear, of jubilation, of condemnation that Radhika is expressing, actually, they are indicative of the extent and extraordinary height of her love for Krishna. This is what it actually indicates for the sadhak. When he's reading this, he's appreciating just how much, to what extent does Radhika love Krishna. It's phenomenal to appreciate and examine and discuss with devotees, because this is the topic that we should be discussing as much as possible. We can discuss Atma Tattva, etc., cutting the jungles of Mayavad and impersonalism. That has to be done. But simultaneously, if the goal, the appreciation of what is Braja Prem, what is Braj Bhav, it's the love between Radha and Krishna. And what is the nature of that love between Radha and Krishna is most graphically demonstrated in this 47th chapter by this Divyan Mad, these bewildered talks of Sri Radhika. So then after these talks, because Uddhav has been requested by Krishna to come and pacify the gopis, Then the gopis, after these jalpas by Radhika, they honor Uddhav, and Uddhav begins to give messages, but they're about Gyankand, they're about knowledge of Atma Tattva, etc. And it's described that this type of knowledge, the gopis have already burnt that knowledge to ashes. They are well beyond needing to hear that type of message. And then eventually the gopis, they do become a little bit satisfied because they're appreciating that Krishna has in fact sent Uddhav to pacify them. So they are appreciating that, but they don't really appreciate Uddhav's words or Krishna's words through Uddhav initially. And then gradually, they become more appreciative. Uddhav's words soften, and he doesn't expand on this Atma Tattva quite so much. And in the end, it's described that the gopis, after hearing his words, because Uddhav is basically trying to pacify them, Uddhava is trying to pacify them in their separation. He can't, like with Nanda Baba the night before, he couldn't understand whether to congratulate Nanda Baba or to commiserate with Nanda Baba's feelings. Because from his point of view, he was seeing that this was the greatest show of affection and of love to Krishna. And he couldn't figure out how to encourage that or to console him in his separation mood. He was bewildered. This is Uddhav. This is the disciple of Brihaspati. Brihaspati is described in the third canto by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as being Brahman realized. Uddhav is Brahman realized. This means, Brihaspati is Brahman realized, which means that Uddhav also is Brahman realized, but he's also realizing the personality simultaneously. So this is also an interesting topic to discover. And then when, after the gopis had sung their own lament to Uddhav, their grief to Uddhav, then Uddhav is described, begins to give many more messages to the gopis. And at one point, he tells all the gopis to close your eyes. And he says to them, you are all dearer to me than my life. This is what Krishna is saying to the gopis. I will now deliver you from your separation. And they close their eyes for a moment. And then within that moment, it's described, I'll read it. In a flash of a second, Yoga Maya compressed millions of years into a single moment. All rasa, playing dice, drinking honey liquor, water sports, swing pastimes, all happened instantly. Uddhav paused a moment and then told them to open their eyes. And they felt a new birth of bliss. So the gopis have now been pacified by this mystical message that Krishna has conveyed to them. But the whole mood and topic of this chapter just revolves around the extraordinary feelings in separation, as do all the Gits, as I said initially. All the Gits, the Venu-gita, Pranaya-gita, Gopi-gita, Yugal-gita, and this Brahmara-gita. They're all, but the Brahmara-gita in particular, these moods are given most poignantly. And then Uddhav, it's described that he stays for several months amongst the gopis. And when he finally comes to leave, Nanda Baba, trying to please Uddhav, because his Staibhav in Vatsalya cannot shift. It's not possible to shift that. Nevertheless, he does say, oh, perhaps we should be performing devotion. We should be performing devotion to Krishna. If we want Krishna to come back to our village, we should be performing devotion, which is not the mood of the Brijvasis at all. The Brijvasis, they are nourishing Krishna as parents, etc. They never see Krishna as that supreme personality of Godhead. They only see him as their dependent. He is dependent on them, and they feel this is exactly how it is. They know that Krishna can't feed himself. They have to feed him. They have to make all arrangements for his happiness, for everything. They are completely serving Krishna in a sense of nourishing him. They're not dependent on him like the Dwarkavasis. The dynamic of the Dwarkavasis or Mathuravasis, they're seeing Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead, or as Paramatma, as a great, great personality that they will depend on. Whereas the residents of Gokul have nothing of that. They are completely knowing conclusively that Krishna depends on them. And now he's left them. So this extraordinary mood of separation that is drowning the inhabitants of Gokul. And the gopis are at the pinnacle of that, tasting that separation. And then the Brijabasis, there's some beautiful verses by Uddhav as he's leaving, because he begins to glorify, of course, the gopis praying. Gurudev described many, many times, all those followers of Srila Gurudev listening will all remember how he described it. Uddhav went to Vrindavan and he looked up at the mountain of their praying and his hat fell off his head. He always describes it like this. And then as Uddhav is leaving, he's saying this beautiful verse, Ahamaho Charnarenu Jusam Aham Shyam Vrindavane Kim Api Gulma Lotak Sadivnim Ya Dusjajam Swajanam Aya Patam Chahitva Bejo Mukunda Padavim Shrutibir Vimrajam. This is saying the gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members who are very difficult to give up. And they have forsaken the path of chastity to take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, Krishna, which one should search for through Vedic knowledge. Oh, let me be fortunate enough to be one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan, because the gopis trample them and bless them with the dust of their lotus feet. So Uddhav is not feeling confident of begging for a birth in Vrindavan as anything more than a bush that he can take the dust of the gopis' feet. So this is an extraordinary honor towards the gopis that he's saying like this. He's just filled with utter admiration to the gopis. He's saying also, Vande Nanda Vrajashrinam Padarenam Abhikshana Yasham Harikatod Gitam Punati Bhuvanatrayam. He says, I repeatedly offer my respect to the dust from the feet of the women of Nanda Maharaj's cowherd village. When these gopis loudly chant the glories of Sri Krishna, the vibration purifies the three worlds. So these are the topics that the devotees need to hear regularly. As I tried to make this platform initially at the beginning of our time together today, that the importance of hearing these pastimes, not feeling that, oh, they are so confidential, I won't speak about them. But our Gurudev, my Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, has spoken so boldly on these topics. And if we are his shishyas, then surely it is our duty to first of all try to enter into these topics as he has encouraged us to do, by entering into the mood of Vrindavan, and also by explaining to the best of our ability, by the mercy of Srila Gurudev, these topics. If we attempt to speak these topics, surely Gurudev will give us the proper words to actually describe them, give us the proper way to actually how to present them. But we have to make that effort, that initial effort, not just simply stay within the boundaries of Atma Tattva or jungle cutting, etc., or trying to work out someone's difficulties or problems or this or that or the other. All problems and difficulties are completely resolved as soon as attachment to Krishna will manifest in the heart. What does Krishna say in the 33rd chapter, the last chapter of the Rasa Panchadhiya? Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusyam deha ashritana bhajate kidrisha, what's that? Bhajate kidrisha krida yashrutva tatparo bhavet. That Krishna has manifested. I'll just read the exact translation. In order to bestow mercy upon the devotees, Bhagavan Sri Krishna manifests his human-like form and performs such extraordinary pastimes that anyone who hears them must become exclusively devoted to him. And the word that Shukadev uses is bhavet. Again, this word bhavet. This is in the imperative sense. This means this must happen. The more we can develop our ability to present these topics of Raskatha in a proper context with a proper platform on the basis of the Srimad Bhagavatam, then the more the world at large will be purified, the more we personally will be purified, and the more the devotees will be purified by hearing these topics. So I've tried to just touch a little bit on these topics. I haven't really entered fully, but I've said something about the different jalpas in particular. I've said how they escalate to the 5th jalpa, that's Sun jalpa, and then how they blossom out, it seems, towards the end at the Sujalpa. So there's a rhyme to it, so to speak, which is intoxicating to follow that mood, and also to appreciate how is Uddhav witnessing this. This is what Srila Gurudev explains himself. How does Uddhav experience this? How are we, conditioned souls, experiencing the vision, perhaps, of Sri Radhika expressing such harsh moods towards Krishna, saying he's deceitful, he's a liar, he's a debauchee, etc. How are we going to reconcile with this? How are we going to appreciate that? So these are just a few sprinkles or touching on these extraordinary topics. So I'm hoping that by explaining just a little bit, that you will all become inspired to read this chapter 47 for yourselves, particularly in the Sa'artha Darshani by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. This beautiful book. This book has this description so graphically by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and Srila Gurudev has spoken on this, and there are a couple of lectures on pure bhakti about this topic. So I'm begging for the mercy that at some time I will appreciate these topics more and more fully as the days go by. And on the strength of our sadhana, our chanting, our regulated practice, etc., that some mercy will come and some grace will manifest for me to enter into this Lila. So, Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhavyacha, Patidanam Pavnavya Vaishnave Namo Namaha.
Maharaj, that was completely beautiful and sublime, and I get a strong sense, although it's always a little bit more difficult on Zoom than when you're in a room, but I get a strong sense that that sprinkling, as you said, that you gave us has touched a lot of people's hearts and has inspired many of us. And perhaps we can talk later about perhaps doing a few. I think what would be really beautiful is if we went away and read that chapter as you've suggested, and then we could do a few installments on that chapter from you. I think that would be beautiful.
I don't think that there's any more confidential chapter in the whole Srimad Bhagavatam than this chapter 47.
Yeah.
It's like the culmination of the entirety. And it's not easy to actually broach this topic, because it's not a topic that we generally speak about. You know, it is really, really confidential. It does need to have a lot of prayer and careful respect engendered towards the topic. If that is not there, if it's any way made light of or frivolous, then we can't even begin to approach. If it's, you know, or it's for any alternative, if we want pleasure from this or something, we want service to the gopis. We want their mercy, grace, and the entrance into Lila.
Maharaj, I'm going to kick, I don't know how many questions we have, but I'm going to, please send in any questions you have to me, and I'll pick your question, and then we'll complete the session with Srimati Taruni Dasi, who'll be doing the bhajan. I have a question for you, Maharaj. This mood of separation, I think words obviously are always a very approximate vehicle for describing anything. And when we're describing a noun, we can be reasonably accurate, but when we're describing adjectives, it's very difficult, especially adjectives of the heart. So when we talk about descriptive things like separation mood, the conditioned soul immediately goes to that feeling of separation, of being bereft, being without. But actually the separation mood is much more subtle and nuanced than that. I'd like you to just expand a little bit for the devotees to explain that. You touched on it, the ecstasy of the union within separation that you touched on, so that separation is not what we think of in a mundane sense, but is actually a very ecstatic feeling, and how we can perhaps appreciate that sentiment.
It really comes out in the descriptions of what is described as Atma Tattva, Rasa Tattva. And they're called Vyabhachari bhavs, because the separation is exhibited in this form. And when we dive into the descriptions of the bhav of jealousy, for example, or pride, or hurtfulness, or disparagement, I'm going to excuse myself for 1 second and just get a book, because I want to read you exactly what I'm talking about. Just a second. There are 33 Vyabhachari bhavs, and I haven't learned them all. So
they're the same as Sanchari, Vyabhachari.
Yes, Vyabhachari bhavs and Sanchari bhavs. For example, I mean, separation is so many branched. It's not just a singular feeling of separation. It expands. There are so many different facets to it to consider that Rupa Goswami has given us, so that we get an opportunity to actually appreciate this more significantly. So 33, for example, the first one is called nirved, and it's described self-disparagement, means to reproach oneself, considering oneself to be fallen and worthless. Often the gopis, they feel like this, but this is a transcendental mood. This is not a material mood. We should never, because they sound material. Self-disparagement, we kind of know what that means materially, but in the spiritual realm, it has a completely different connotation, that we need the mercy to understand this. And it's saying nirved arises from great distress, feelings of separation, jealousy, non-performance of duty, and performance of non-duty. In nirved, anxiety, tears, change of color, feelings of worthlessness, heavy sighing, and other anubhavs are manifest. So there's a whole world that takes place when this particular Sanchari bhav or Vyabhachari bhav will manifest. So these are all aspects to help us appreciate what you're saying about that separation nature, that separation mood. What is that? It's like we don't have a language for this. We don't discuss in this. This is a completely another realm, because, Prabhu, it doesn't have anything to do with this world at all. As long as we're rooted in the conditioned consciousness and trying to apply it into our own material conditioned lives, we're not going to understand this at all. But when we have some sort of attraction towards Krishna and the spiritual world, and we want to appreciate, yes, this is separate from me. I'm trying to look at that image of Radha and Krishna and understand what they, and it's another language that we're trying to walk into that world. The whole of the rasa tattva path is nothing to do with us anymore. It's about them all the time. If we're thinking, oh, when are these anubhavs going to come in my heart? When are these sattvika bhavs going to? This is completely wrong. This is not the way it is at all.
Oh, so that, okay, that's beautiful. So what you're saying is the mistake of the materialistic mentality would be to make the subject of all of this me and my feelings.
Yes.
Actually, what we're doing is we're trying to appreciate their with a capital T, their feelings.
Yes.
And by observing and appreciating their feelings, which are clearly never going to be material, we can be transported into the transcendental emotional absolute.
We drop our material conception entirely.
Right.
I mean, that's what the whole Atma Tattva is all about, to realize that we're not the body, we are the spirit soul. So what is the activity of the spirit soul? This is about the activity of the spirit soul. And this is actually the heart. And we can enter it to some degree by appreciating these Vyabhachari bhavs or these Sanchari bhavs. And this pastime itself, it's if we're thinking it's something to do with us, then we should just close the book and go back home and go to sleep.
Which comes back to the verse Anyablasta Sunyam, right? Because Anyablasta Sunyam perfectly summarizes that it's not about our happiness, it's about their happiness.
The first two lines of that verse are called the Tatashta Lakshan, which means that is the secondary aspect, the negative aspect. Anyabilasita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam. Those are the prohibitions, so to speak, not to go into gyan, not to go into karma, have no material desires, etc. But the second two lines, that's anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiya uttama. This is the description of what is uttam bhakti, and this is the appreciation of the bhavs of that anukulyena krishnanu shilanam. What is that? That's about the nature and the relationship between Radha and Krishna. Once I can spill into this world, once I can leave my own little conditioned problems, and I said at the very beginning of this meeting about Mayavadism and impersonalism, that is our disease that we are trying to purify by hearing the sweetness of the Lila. We need the mercy, grace, and Lila. I mean, you have given the name of this Zoom. So it's so profound, actually, the name of this channel, this Bhakti Zoom channel, mercy, grace, Lila. That's how it has. And when we come to the Lila with the grace and the mercy, we have no more bodily conception. We have no more problems because no more material problems. We just have a problem how to please Krishna. That's our only consciousness, how to bring pleasure through Guru to Krishna. We start to appreciate Guru's swarup, Guru's as his manjari form, not just our Guru, but all our Gurus in our line. What are they all doing to please Radha and Krishna? And it's not about me and my greatness and how wonderful and how many books I distributed and how many classes I've given and how many verses I know and all these other stumbling blocks that devotees go through. It's not real. It's not about that at all. Yes, we'll get some sort of encouragement and so on from doing those types of activities. But at the end of the day, we just want to walk away from, everything. It's like, many people these days, they're talking about how to save the world. I'm talking about like externally now, we're in a difficult time, etc., etc. But the devotees don't want necessarily to save the world. They want to leave the world. We want to go back to the spiritual world. That's where we want to actually go to. And if we can purify others to have that same interest, but that same focus, that same appreciation that this is the material world. It's so thick and so deep and so many lifetimes ingrained within us. But only by the power of these pastimes, these Leelas, this is what all the verses are indicating and saying. I just read that verse, Anugrahaya Bhaktanam Manusyam Deha. This is saying that by hearing about Krishna's pastimes in Ras Leela, you can walk away from this world.
Maharaj, by that very subtle distinction between the superimposition of our own negative emotion on the transcendental versus the appreciation and service of the transcendental absolute, and the difference between the two is the difference between a devotee being depressed and a devotee being ecstatic.
Yes.
Forgive me, as I said, I have to go in a second. I don't want to obstruct any questions, and we've got Taruni who's going to do some bhajan. So can I request, do we have any questions for Maharaj, or maybe everybody might be a bit blown away right now and just absorbing it rather than questions, but please, if you have any questions, my brothers and sisters. And
if we can I just say one more thing? If we have anything to take away from here, it's to actually enter this world of Rasa Tattva, as described in the last 14 chapters of Jaiva Dharma. Gurudev has given us a wealth of information about this. If we actually can engross our consciousnesses in that now, then very quickly we'll enter another world. We'll be walking around thinking of these topics. And that's the goal. That's the goal. For at the time of death, we will be immersed in these topics. That's the goal. That is the, sadhya. Yadav Prabhu has a question from Sardinia.
Yeah, I just want to just make sure it's on topic, if you could, please. Is he there? So yeah, you want to unmute Prabhu? Go.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat.
Dandavat, Yadavji. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat. So I wanted to ask you something, Maharaj. So Uddhav is a Jnani Bhakta, you said, and is situated in that consciousness. So is a perfect and Nityalila associate of the Lord, that as Uddhav, right? So when he sees something superior, like the love of Raja Gopis, he wants to become something like a bushes or a grass, so that he can receive their moods.
Mercy.
It isn't like, because we have always heard that Hanuman is never attracted to Krishna, even though Krishna is superior to Ram. We have Brahmara-gita example and many others, but Hanuman is never attracted to Krishna, even though he's superior. So why is Uddhava attracted in this occasion to the moods of gopis, even though he's situated in his transcendental form, which should be like,
because
what I think.
Because the gopis' prem is so extraordinary. I mean, the talks of Sri Radhika that he's just witnessed when she's talking and condemning Krishna. And Uddhav can sense the tremendous depth of affection that she has for Krishna. And it's out of his bracket. It's like it's beyond his ability to appreciate, not to appreciate, but to, yes, you can understand, to be like that. He cannot reach that place. Actually, I once asked Srila Gurudev, after I'd heard him speak on this topic, and I said, you're describing Uddhav as being such a great devotee and appreciating Radha and Krishna in such a way, but he's a Jnani Bhakta, and you're telling us this, and who are we? I was talking about myself. This was 20 years ago. And Srila Gurudev, he looked at me and he said, you are like clay. I can mold you as I want to. So by Gurudev's mercy, if we're connected with Gurudev, he can actually mold us ourselves to appreciate these more fully. But with Uddhav, his Staibhav is completely fixed. He can't become a gopi. He can only become a bush in Vrindavan.
But why the desire arose
Sorry,
in
one
his
second,
heart?
Babu. One second, Babu. Forgive me, Maharaj, as scheduled, I have to go now. Once the questions are finished, if you could possibly call on Taruni Didi to finish off with bhajan, I'd be very grateful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Prabhu.
Tridandi Maharaj,
Yes.
one point with regards to Prabhu's question is that
Ashwin.
Uddhav, his Staibhav is fixed, as you said. So he's not desiring that mood of the gopis, but he's desiring the intensity, because they have higher intensity and also supremely higher mood. His mood is fixed, but still he wants to experience the intensity of their love. So that's why he wants to get the dust of their lotus feet, so that that intensity can come. But the mood will not come. For instance, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his associates.
The greed, you mean? When you say intensity, you mean like greed?
Well, greed would tend to indicate that you're having greed for a particular mood, right? So he's not having greed to be in Gopi Bhav, but there's an intensity of their prem. Just as I was saying, the Murari Gupta, he's Hanuman, but in Mahaprabhu's Lila, then he's experiencing a higher intensity of prem. You see? Because the specialty of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that one specialty is he's taking devotees from different realms of the spiritual world, and he's giving them a higher taste. He's not necessarily giving them Gopi Bhav, but they're getting something higher. So
like
Uddhav
Haridas
Ji,
Thakur.
yes, so Uddhav Ji, he's desiring to experience that intensity of prem, but not to change his mood from Gyani Bhakti to Madhuras.
Yes, very nice, very nice, very nice. I understand that. Very nice.
Do you want this question about this topic for a long time, about why Lakshmi is trying to perform austerities? Also, we know from Sripada to become a gopi, but she has not the, we can say the guts to become a gopi, to cow dung and everything. So I have this question for a long time: why trying to reach something if you are situated in your transcendental form? But this is the first time that I actually heard an answer that is, is satisfying me. Not the mood, but the intensity is. Yes, I thank you so much, Maharaj, for this answer.
Yes, Maharaj, very nice answer, Maharaj.
But we see with Narada Muni, he wants the mood and the intensity. So Naradiya Gopi. You see?
Yes.
So it's not always the same.
Narada has different svarups in the spiritual world. We can see he's Madhumangal, he's Naradiya Gopi, he's Narad himself. So it takes different parts. Yes, it takes different parts in Vrindavan and also in other Lilas. We can see.
Yes. Nice answer, Maharaj. Appreciate that. Yeah, intensity.
Okay, I'm going to mute.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank Maharaj. Yes. Very nice. All right, Prabhu. So I think we've just about done our time, unless anyone has any urgent illuminations to offer. Prakashatma Prabhu, you have any illuminations there?
No, thank you so much, Maharaj. It was very nice what you said, and it reminded me of Gurudev, how he was trying to imbibe those moods into our hearts. Thank you.
How can we do it? We're so fallen. We do it by his mercy, right? If we simply just try to hear his katha, we try to immerse ourselves in what he's given us so much. And if we're able to be strong enough to oppose the Mayic influences that must prevail when we're living in the material world.
And you are his Jivan Mridanga.
I'm nothing. I'm not even anywhere on the map.
True, you represent, and now this is very valuable. We need.
Well, this necessity of knowing the superiority of, first of all, the Bhagavatam, and then what is the heart of the Bhagavatam. If we just go there, I mean, all the acharyas point to the Bhagavatam, 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 Bhagavatam. And what is the heart of the Bhagavatam are the Gits. And what is the heart of appreciating that is this mood of separation. And that's 50% of the day in Goloka Vrindavan, Gokul. Meeting and separation, Hare Krishna, meeting, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, separation. Everywhere is meeting and separation. So we should try to churn these topics of how can we more fully appreciate.
And by hearing about their glories, we forget about our miseries. And
Absolutely.
also by hearing Radharani's Prajalpa, I forget my own Prajalpa.
True. Yes, true. Yes, true. Very true. Yes.
Maharaj, can you give one or two more classes on this topic? Because you have taken us to the door. So now, Madhupakita Babandhu Mas, now let's enter. Give us some in your own time, Maharaj.
We could go basically, I mean, I've been thinking about this topic intensely for the last sort of week in, anticipation of speaking to you all and thinking how to present it. And I've gone backwards and forwards in the sense of illustrating the platform, because when the platform is part of the actual jewel, I believe, when we appreciate the Srimad Bhagavatam and its whole symphonic sound vibration, and within that are these incredible life airs, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he said, yes, don't leave the Rasa Lila in the hands of the Sahajiyas. It is the property of the Gaudiyas. So we can only present the Rasa Lila on a very pucka platform of the Bhagavatam. So when we look at the Bhagavatam as a whole, and then we can start to discern that actually this Brahmara-gita is, I think it's the pinnacle. I don't know a chapter that is more explicit in the heart of Radharani, showing her heart in her tortured Divyanmad consciousness to the world. Uddhav represents the world, because Uddhav's going to take this and broadcast it in Mathura and Dwarka, which is what Krishna wanted to do. That was his design. And he does that, and he makes the Dwarkavasis weep like anything when he starts to describe, as you said, this intensity, that, because that's basically all that Uddhav can walk away with, isn't it? What you've just said, Maharaj, is that intensity of devotion. How to, and we also, oh, someone's just saying something, Yada. What did he say? Just a second. Yes. Yes, so this intensity, I believe that this intensity is inspired by our chanting, sufficiently focused. And it begins with our regulation. It's all incredibly simple. All we have to do is become regulated in the world and put aside our various frivolous attractions and become sober. The world is intoxicating. It's like an addiction. And we just have to purify that addiction to wanting that intoxicant pleasure or entertainment from this material world, and realize that the world of the spiritual land is so much sweeter. So we have to hear about it again. And in the chapters of the 10th canto, especially the first 35 chapters, then we can be completely immersed in Vrindavan consciousness. And particularly, Maharaj, if we just start to describe, the Vrindavan Prikramas, all the different Lila stallis that we go to, that whole month of Kartik, which is, I think, what this whole program is about, to prepare ourselves for that Kartik experience. That is a total immersion in Braj consciousness. That's what the Kartik Parikrama is all about. So that's very exciting prospect every single year. And every single year, of course, is different because we've grown in the last 11 months between one Kartik and the next one, next Kartik. Okay, I'm going to stop in case I start rambling. Okay, Prabhus. Vanshakapa Turabhyascha. Kripa Sindhavevacha. Patitanam Pavamya Vaishnave Namaha. So Tarani is there?
Hare Krishna, Danava Pranams.
Dandavat Tarani Diri Kijai. Where are you? Let me find you. Are you open up
I'm hiding
your video here? No, you're not allowed to hide on Zoom. Zoom tells you to put your tilak on. Oh, there we go. Have I got you? No, that's your soda. I'm looking at soda. Where are you, Tarani? You're still hiding.
If you want me on camera, that wasn't part of the singing deal. If
All right. Whatever you choose. No pressure. We're a relaxed group here.
Yeah, another time.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you for the beautiful class. It was really amazing. And I'm also really appreciating Ashram Maharaj's answer to the Prabhu's question. It really makes a lot of sense for me. I've often wondered these things also. And I'd love it, Maharaj, if Tridandi Maharaj, if you could speak more on this topic as well. Yashoda Prabhu was wanting that, because we're creating this build up to Kartik Mass. And so Srila Gurudev also said that Damodarashtakam is not just for Kartik Mass, it's for the whole year. So I was going to sing Shri Damodarashtakam.
Right. How nice.
That's on page 290 in the small songbook. Okay. Agyani Timadandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshuramanitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Nama Vishvaram Saschidanandarupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Dyashodabiyulukaladevamanam Param Rishtamatyanta Drutya Gopya Rudantamoho Netra Yugmam Rijantam Karam Bhoja Yugmena Satanka Netram Maharshvasakam Patri Rekanka Kanta Stita Graivadamodaram Bhakti Padam Iti Triksvalila Bhidananda Kunde Swagosham Nemajandam Akyapayantam Tadi Eshita Geshu Bhakte Chitatam Puna Prematastam Shatavriti Vande Varam Deva Moksham Na Moksha Vadimva Nachanyam Rineham Vade Shadapiha Idam Deva Purnata Gopalabalam Sada Me Manasya Virastam Kimanyai Idam te mukham bhajam avyaktanile Ritam kundale snitaraktastra gopya Mahashtambitam bimbaraktatadam me Manasya virastam malam lakshalabhai Namo Deva Damodarananta Vishnu Prasida Prabhu Dukha Jalapti Magnam Kripa Drishti Vrityati Dinam Bhatano Griha Nishama Magyam Ediyakshi Drisha Kuverat Majo Badha Mojai Vayadvat Dvaya mochito bhakti bhajokrito cha. Tata prema bhaktim swakam me prayascha. Namokshe graho me stita modareha. Namaste sutamne sporadiptitamne. Tvadiyodarayata vishvasya damne. Namoradikaye tvadiya priyaye. Namo nandalilaya devaya tubhyam. Namoradikaye tvadiya priyaye. Namo nandalilaya devaya tubhyam. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur, Haribol, 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 Gaura Haribol, Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Jai Shri Gurudeva ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai.
Jai Tarunidasi Devi ki jai. That was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Tell me if I'm allowed to leave.